Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this evening for a public discussion about the proposed fee increase at Joshua Tree National Park. My name is Dave Smith. I am the park superintendent, and I am delighted to see you guys here. I wish there were like another 10 or 20 or 30 people here, but you know what? Beggars can't be choosers, and we were going to try to get the story out to as many people as possible. I've had 3 or 4 other meetings I've been at over the last month where I've been able to discuss this with groups at least this size or a little bit larger. So I'm trying to get the word out there. If you have friends that are interested in this, I encourage you, please have them either give me a call at work, have them fill out one of the visitor forms over there, the comment forms, have them email the park to our line that we have for it, which is on, is this printed on there? Or, yes. So if you go to this one right here, the flyer that's by the door, it actually has an email address. Or if you want to, write a letter. I like reading letters when they come in. Tell me how you feel. This is your park. We want your feedback on this as much as possible. So the way this is going to work, I'll give you a rundown, a little bit of the fee history at the park, and then we will open it up for public comment and discussion, and I will try to answer questions as much as possible. I'm accompanied this evening by our Chief Ranger, Jeff Olfs, who also manages our fee program with the help of Cynthia, who is our fee manager inside the park. Jamie is going to be helping me out as well. She's also one of our fee rangers. So we've got 4 rangers here tonight to help you answer your questions. Any questions? No questions. Well, let's go ahead and start. When I was young, I really was frustrated by the idea that we had to charge admission to go into a national park. When I got out of college, I spent 4 months of my life camping around the United States with my spouse, my soon-to-be spouse, and we camped at Joshua Tree. And I got my $25 Golden Eagle Pass, but I hated paying camping fees. So I tried to go onto BLM land so I didn't have to pay camping fees, or I tried to sneak into a Forest Service site, so that wasn't the case. So for me, it was really hard, the whole idea of actually paying fees to go into a park or into a forest or into a BLM site that I owned as an American citizen. But now I'm a park manager, and my perspective has changed just a little bit from what it was back in 1992. Because I look at what's happened at Joshua Tree right now, and I'm looking at the disparity between what our needs are and what the actual revenue that we have inside the park through appropriations through Congress. So, a little bit about fee history in the United States. When parks were originally created, parks like Yosemite and Yellowstone, Mesa Verde, Glacier, they were actually charged by Congress to go ahead and charge fees to enter those parks. You know, typically they ranged from anywhere from $2 to $10 per vehicle to go into the parks. And that was initiated in about 1912, 1914, and that continued on until the 30s. What I really think is interesting, you know, the prices they were charging back in 1916 for entry into a park boggle my mind right now. Now, it could have been that the folks that had cars back then were the folks that could actually afford that amount of money to go into a park. But, so for example, Yellowstone would have been the equivalent of $90. If you're going to Yosemite, $135, you know, per car to go into that site. The pass was good for a year at those sites, but most folks just visited it once and they moved on back to their sites. Go ahead, next slide, please. So during the 20s and 30s, actually specifically during the Depression, there were a lot of progressives in Congress that felt parks do belong to the people. We are affecting it so that people can actually get into their parks. We need to lower the fees. So a public law was actually passed that capped the fees inside of national parks at $2 per vehicle going inside the parks. And that lasted for decades. And that was true for all the parks that actually charged admission to enter. Now remember, we've got 401 different national parks across the United States right now. About 130 of them charge admission to go inside. The other 270 are free parks. I just came from Kansas. The 5 parks that we have in Kansas all are free. And we have no authorization from Congress to actually charge funds. Everything that funds those parks actually comes from congressional appropriations. All the parks that actually charge fees also have congressional appropriations that help fund them as well. So for example, at Joshua Tree each year, our budget is about $5.5 million. That's what Congress gives the National Park Service to administer Joshua Tree each year. Those fees stayed static for years and years and years. Beginning in the 1990s, though, following the Reagan administration, following the Bush administration, less money was going into public lands. Remember, this is the time of James Watt. A lot of money was being pulled back from Department of the Interior and from, actually from agriculture as well at this time. So as a result of that, they came up with this idea in 1996 of the fee demonstration program, which was the idea we were going to increase fees at different national parks across the United States. We're going to use that money to pay for the backlog of problems that we have inside of parks. So the infrastructure inside the parks during the middle of the 1990s had, well, it had declined considerably. Roads were in bad condition. I remember I was working at Dinosaur in 92, 93, 94. I was at Split Mountain Campground, and we closed that campground because not only do we not have the staff to actually operate that campground, but it was in such deplorable condition. The roads had broken up, the plumbing no longer worked there. The park did not have any money to operate it. So the fee demonstration program was created as a mechanism to actually pay for those different things that had to be fixed inside of different national parks. So that began in 1996. It was a demonstration program. It was supposed to last for about 10 years. Kept on getting reauthorized and reauthorized because Congress realized, wow, we don't have the money, or we're not willing to spend the money to actually fund parks at the level that we'd like to fund them at. Let's use fees as a mechanism to actually get what we want to be done. So since that time, these parks have depended a lot on fees, including Joshua Tree. So just a little bit about the Park Service budget as a whole. We've got our full budget for the National Park Service is $2.6 billion for all the sites that we have. Last year we had about 273 million visitors that came to national parks across the United States. The reason I'm discussing the Park Service as a whole is because we've been directed by the National Park Service Director, John Jarvis, that all national park sites that charge a fee need to actually be considering this right now. He sees in the next 2 years, as we get ready for our Park Centennial, 100 years of National Park Service across the United States, that the condition of the national parks are not what they should be. He sees that the budget has not increased at all since, well, for the last 3 or 4 years, since sequestration. In fact, we've actually gone down since sequestration, and as a result of that, more parks have also been added to the system, both by the President and by Congress. Cost of living has gone up at the different park sites through healthcare, through inflation, and through the cost of things. So if you look at the Park Service budget as a whole, about $2.6 billion. If you look in actual dollars, it's been going down. The overall cost for the National Park Service has been going up. So to make that difference, to deal with that difference, we turn to fees to actually achieve that. So how much fees do we generate a year? Can you go back one? I'm sorry. So we bring in about $173 million across all of our national parks. So the 130 parks that charge fees bring in about that amount of money per year. At Joshua Tree, we bring in about $3 million of fees a year that we can actually use. The way the fee demonstration program was created, and eventually it became what we call FLORIA, which is the fee program, the law that Congress passed that allows us to do that. Of the money that's brought into the park, for each $100 that comes in, $80 at a park like Joshua Tree can be used for infrastructure, can be used for services that actually benefit the visitors that are coming into the park. The other 20%, the other $20 goes to those other 270 parks that have no capability of raising fees. So the park that I just came at from was Brown versus Board of Education in Kansas. I would put in a proposal each year to use that extra 20% that was out there because my park could not charge fees. So that's how the fee system works across the system. Okay, you can go ahead. So, Joshua Tree. Why are we charging fees at Joshua Tree? There were no fees charged when I was a kid. When I first came out here and went to Jumbo Rock back in 1973 for the first time, what was the motivation for charging fees inside the park? Well, a lot of it has to do with visitation and that visitation trend that we've seen at Joshua Tree. So, 1950, 71,000 people came to Joshua Tree. 1970, 640,000 people came to Joshua Tree. 1990, first year we topped 1 million people coming to Joshua Tree. This year, if we follow our current trajectory, we should have 1.5 million people coming into Joshua Tree as a park visitor. It's an impact. The impact of the campgrounds, the impact of the road structures, maintaining the roads that we have inside the park. I was up at a Black Rock campground. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but a lot of the infrastructure inside of our park right now needs additional funding. We're probably not going to get it all from fees because it cannot pay for the amount of money that we need for some of this infrastructure, but it at least gives us some headway and moves us in a direction that can actually benefit us. Next slide. So a little bit about the history, and I had to put these numbers together myself, so they may be slightly incorrect. So if I'm wrong, Cynthia, tell me I'm wrong about this. But 1987 marked the very first year that entrance fees were used at Joshua Tree, and they were $5 per car at the time. So in 2004, we initiated the camping fees at the park. Now, as a visitor coming to Joshua Tree, I got to tell you, one of the coolest things in the world was to be able to camp up at the park and not actually pay anything for camping. But I got to tell you, our maintenance crews have benefited immensely from that $5 per site, or $2.50 if you're a senior or had the military pass. It really helped fund a lot of our maintenance program and operations and the toilets that we have in some of the park sites. So 2006, the entrance fee increased to $15. Yes, the entrance fee was increased to $15, and dry camping doubled the next year to $10 per site. Okay. So typically, user fees had to be, the recreational fees that we used inside the park had to be used for infrastructure. They had to be used for things like toilets. They had to be used for roads or visitor centers or exhibits. We've been given a little bit more levity in recent years, and this next year specifically, to use that for visitor services. So we can start using it for interpretation, so long as it's directly tied to where you're using it. For example, if we charge camping fees at Jumbo Rocks, I can have a park ranger actually work up at Jumbo Rocks to give evening programs, and I can pay for that person's hours with the fees that are generated at the campground. I can pay for my maintenance staff to actually clean the toilets up at the campground if we are charging fees at those locations. So there's a direct correlation between where you're paying the money and the benefit that you're getting out of it. I can use that. So I'm looking at this next year, next couple years, if we do a fee increase, to be able to use that money specifically for those locations. So I was going to go over some of the things I've seen. I've been here now for almost 2 months, worked at this park for a long time, and I came back and I looked at the park and through my eyes over the last 60 days, and these are some of the things I've been seeing. We have insufficient staff right now to actually afford the kind of rescues that actually happen in this park. We depend on JOSAR. We depend on volunteers, which do a fantastic job to do our rescues inside the park, but we lack the staff, the paid staff, the accountable staff, to actually be able to do those rescues inside the park. I was driving home the other night in Indian Cove, and there was a rollover accident that occurred inside the park. First on scene, well, San Bernardino County Sheriff, because there was no Park Service employees in that area. CHP, was called to the location. They couldn't find the location. Eventually, Park Service resources came to that spot, but it was a long time. It was a rollover with 2 people inside the car. That's not acceptable for me as a park ranger if I'm going to be taking care of the people that are inside the park. Insufficient trail crew to maintain the current trail system. I was up at Black Rock 3 nights ago. I got lost. It's been a while since I've hiked up there, but the signage was so bad, I couldn't find my way around. I'm pretty good with signs. I've been doing this for 25 years, but I got lost. We need more trail crew. We need more signs to get around those areas if I can't find my way around. Our educational staff has been cut in half. We used to do 22,000 kids a year at Joshua Tree, at Black Rock. Last year we did 10,000 because we've cut that program in half because we couldn't afford to have the 2 GS5 rangers, the 2 $25,000 a year rangers in those positions that would actually allow us to do educational programs. So serving the climbing community, 1/6 of our visitors at Joshua Tree are climbers. So imagine that, 250,000 people a year come to Joshua Tree only to climb. That's the main reason they're there. I've got 1/2 of 1 employee that's assigned to work with the climbers. Not acceptable. Next slide. My fire staff, we just let our fire staff go this year. They work for 6 months. With global warming, with the weeds that we have inside the park, I could have fire staff here 9 or 10 months a year, but there's no money for that. It's not there. So visitor centers that we have around the park. If you go down to Cottonwood, we had a double-wide trailer there for the last 15 years. That's what people coming up to the park can experience when they see the southern portion of the park. We only recently got exhibits inside of that double-wide trailer, which the fee dollars paid for. So Cottonwood, the maintenance complex, full of rats, full of mice. It's a hantavirus just disaster waiting to happen, needs to be replaced. It needs improvement. Repaving the Black Rock Campground has to happen. You know, I'd love to have a year-round ranger presence at all the ranger stations that we have inside the park, but we don't. We'd have no one staying up at Indian Cove right now all the time. You know, that used to be a position that was funded all the time to have someone there. We just don't have the resources any longer to do that. So there's lots of holes that I've seen since I've come here the last 2 months. Next slide, please. So I want to show you some of the things we've done with the fees that have come through. If you go up to Jumbo Rocks, if you go to Indian Cove, you'll see the amphitheaters that have been updated. They're solar powered, they're independent, all paid for with your fee dollars. Next slide. The fee program has helped to cover buses into the park for school programs, for school districts that cannot afford to bring buses into the park. It helps to cover educational programs inside the park with rangers that do that. Helps new exhibits down at the Josh Tree Visitor Center and places like that. Ongoing needs, this is just a view, one of the roads that I saw going into the Black Rock Campground. It needs some TLC desperately. The estimate that we're getting from our maintenance branch, if we're going to do the job we should do, is $10 to $15 million to actually get that campground where it should be. That's a lot of money. You know, our annual operating budget's $5.5 million. We bring in fees in a year about $3 million. We need that to cover staff and other things. We'd have to get some additional money from the Park Service or from Congress to cover that. But the fees will help us to slowly get to that point. They'll pay for planning and other things. This is just a map I wanted to show you. This is just recent disturbances around the boundaries of the park, OHV use inside the park. So this area of the park down here, pretty much all wilderness over here. Every one of these is an OHV, it's an ATV, it's a sand rail or something, or a dirt bike going up into the park in areas where they shouldn't be going into the park, in areas where it's illegal to go into the park. Do I have ranger staff to go there and patrol those regularly? No, I don't have ranger staff to go there and patrol them regularly. Our ranger staff is stretched very, very thin, which I'm trying to articulate to you all right now. Next. You know, the backup at West Entrance. You know, I need to get another entrance station there. I need to get, you know, 2 windows. I need to get 2 lanes going in there into that site. You know, fee dollars can help me actually accomplish that, which frustrates me because we're using fee dollars to pay for our fee operation to expand it. But sometimes those fee rangers are the only staff you're going to have inside the park. And they're an amazing resource for folks that are coming in at night. The visitor centers are all closed. They're there to tell people where to camp. If everything's full, they tell them where the local BLM areas where they can go. They tell them, like, please don't feed the coyotes that are begging on the side of the road right now because we've dealt with our coyote problem. They tell them where the flowers are. I'm really proud of our fee rangers and what they do. So they're more than just collectors of money. They are an amazing park resource. Where did we come up with these numbers tonight for our fees? Did we just pull them out of the air? The Park Service, our Washington office, gave us a set of parameters. They got together a few years ago and said there are 4 different types of parks that charge fees. There are the big Y parks, the Yellowstones, the Yosemites, and those are our top tier, the number 4. The secondary tier are parks like Theodore Roosevelt National Park up in North Dakota. They're like Joshua Tree out here in the California desert, like Death Valley. These are our tier 3, and there are prices that are associated with them. The other 2, you know, the seashores and the small historic sites, those are the lesser ones. The ones to the right tend to be more expensive to operate. The ones to the left, less expensive to operate. Next one, please. So these are the numbers that have been given to us by the Park Service in Washington, the fees that they would like us to be looking at. So for our tier, for an individual visitor coming into the park, they recommend a fee of $12 per person, or for a vehicle, $25 per vehicle for a 1-week pass. Now, the one that, you know, is still kind of boggling to many people, and myself included, is the motorcycle. Because we've always charged motorcycles as individuals, correct, Cynthia?
We have, not all parks do that.
Okay, so historically we've always charged, if you were on a motorcycle, you were just like someone walking in or someone biking into the park. Our bosses in Washington are encouraging us to look at that differently, look at it as a car unit instead of an individual, and that's where the $20 charge is coming from right there. And they believe that a park the size of ours would have a $50 annual pass as opposed to a $30 annual passes, which we have right now. The passes, the Golden Age Pass,
the America the Beautiful Pass, the big passes that you use for going to different national parks, we have no authority over those because those are created by public law. So Congress tells us that senior citizens are going to get that $10 pass that's good for the rest of their life. Or they tell us that the $80 America the Beautiful Pass, that's what we're going to do. Or that military employees and veterans will get the free pass into a park. Or someone who's disabled gets the free pass for life to come into a park. We have no control over those types of things. So before we begin this discussion, I just want you to know I talked to my bosses in San Francisco, and I also talked to their bosses in Washington this week to get a little bit more direction on this. Because the last thing I want to do coming into a national park as the new superintendent is to announce we're having a fee increase at the park. It's the last thing in the world I want to do. So I tried to find out what direction I have on here. And even though we have these tiers, we do have flexibility. Nothing is written in stone at this point. So that's why I come to you tonight to get your feedback. So that's my spiel. That's what I have to say. A little bit of the justification of why I think that fee increases is something we should consider at the park. I'm not sold on it, but I just tell you, if we don't do a fee increase, there is a shortfall in the budget. We've got, like I said, $5.5 million coming in a year. We're able to use about $3 million of fee money right now to offset the difference, but there's a lot of shortfalls here that are not being met inside the park. So I would encourage you, if you have something to share right now, come on up to the mic, and or you can talk from the audience, whatever's most convenient for you.
Thank you for that. For me, it's most instructive. I really appreciate that. You certainly have created a need in your presentation. And I think what I heard you say is the $5.5 million comes from
Congressional appropriations.
Okay, and then the $3 million in fees stay here?
So the $3 million in fees comes from our fee pool. So we bring in probably about $3.8 million a year in fees on average. $800,000 of that gets redistributed to other park units. They compete for it.
Okay.
And $3 million stays with us, and we compete through projects that are reviewed up in San Francisco and then in Washington. Is it a legitimate use of the fee based on what Congress's law is? So Congress has said it has to show a direct correlation of helping the visitor. Can I fund a law enforcement position just because I want a law enforcement position? No, I can't do that. Can I do it because there's a specific need because visitors keep on hurting themselves and I need more paramedics in a certain area of the park? I might be able to fund it through that way. It's a competitive, weird, kind of a hazy thing, but I've got to show that there's a benefit to the visitor before I can get something funded.
Knowing some of your staff, I'm guessing that you do a heck of a job in making that presentation and convince whomever you have to convince to leave the money here. Should you not be successful, some of that $3 million goes somewhere else?
Well, yeah, definitely. So we need to. It's a very stressful time right now because if we don't get that 80% spent, by the end of this calendar year, next year we become a 60% park. So if some of our projects were denied, I've got to make a quick sell very, very quickly, and we need to get those projects started, or we lose 25% of our fees. So we get a punishment from Congress if we're not able to spend the fees that we're bringing in.
As articulate as you were tonight, and knowing some of your staff, I'm certainly optimistic that you're going to get that done, because you'd hate to see that money run away.
Yeah.
But what about the ones that don't charge any fees? Am I safe in assuming that one of the reasons they don't charge any fees because it costs more to collect the fees than it does to charge them? Because you're not going to be able to charge the same amount?
So the question is, why the parks that don't charge fees, why don't they charge fees? Well, they have to be, Congress has to give them authorization to charge. And Congress has specifically said for some parks they can't charge. So in Kansas, they said parks could not charge. So Mr. Dole was the senator at the time, and it was not part of their authorization to charge a fee. Sometimes it is the cost of collection, and some parks have said, you know what, this is ridiculous. It's costing us too much money to charge for camping at this location or charge entrance to this location with the number of people we're getting. We're just not going to charge. But in general, it actually has to do with authorization from Congress. You're following me there?
I'm following you.
So like Mount Rushmore.
Dorothy's not in Kansas anymore. You can't do it, huh?
So Mount Rushmore specifically says in their congressional appropriation, you can never charge admission to Mount Rushmore. Now, the Park Service has gotten around that by charging a parking fee at the garage that's there, which brings in a lot of money that keeps the park operating, but Congress's intent was that there'd never be a charge at Mount Rushmore.
Which is a shame, because those presidents that are depicted that understand this.
They might, I don't know. But like Golden Gate National Rec Area, they don't charge there. It's a recreation area. That's in San Francisco. So all the beaches there, you know, Alcatraz does charge to go on the boat, but that's to get out there on the boat.
I don't want to dominate this, but just a clarification question. Am I understanding you that you have the prerogative, you and your folks here have the prerogative to establish a fee increase of whatever amount? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Basically. I have been directed that have to find out what the public wants as far as fees for this park. And based on that, you know, looking at our needs, make a decision, and then make that recommendation to the regional director in San Francisco, and then she will decide. But if I make a recommendation that this community cannot sustain that, it's not sustainable, I think she would acknowledge that. If I said this community says, you know, the sky's the limit, you know, I think she would probably question that as well. But, you know, what you say actually has an incredible amount of value, because it's going to determine what the final figure is.
And just to comment, as I look through these, anywhere ranging from an increase of 25% to over 800% seems like a big jump in one jump.
And it can be stretched out over, you know, a period of time, and so we do have that flexibility as well. I was reading the newspaper up at Olympic National Park up in Washington. The superintendent there was having a similar meeting, and you know, the public said, "Can we stretch this out over through 2017, so that there's a small increase, you know, each year?" So that's a possibility we can look at.
Thank you.
No problem, sir.
Yes, Dave, thanks for your presentation. What are your projected revenue increases from, if everything went per this direction here, what do you expect to be able to have revenues increase to?
So I was doing a cocktail napkin kind of thing. So maybe Cynthia, you've done more than I've done on that. But if we were to increase our entrance fees by about $5, we'd look at about $1 million a year in increased revenue. If it were a $10 increase, it would be about $2 million. Camping is not a big part of the picture. Most of the revenue would come from entrance fees.
So do you have a number, if all of these fees were instituted, do you have a number?
Well, the thing is, you know, some people are going to be more drawn if the fee were to enter the park $25. They're going to buy the America the Beautiful Pass, which will eventually decrease revenues for the Park Service as a whole, because you're going to get a savings on it. But I would say if we went with that, with maybe 80% confidence, I could say about a $2 million increase based on our current visitation numbers. Miss.
Hi, my name is Leslie. This is my friend Teresa. We're the president and vice president of Dykes on Bikes, basically. We're also very prominent in the local area. We do a lot of camping trips in here. So I'm pretty much informed on a lot of these fees and what's going on here. So I'd like to discuss them with you, please.
This is a perfect place to discuss this, so thank you.
This is what I'd like to do with you. I don't have a problem with most of these fees. In fact, I think some of them should be higher, if you want my honest opinion. I also am heavily in management in my employment, so I deal with these numbers a lot. I'm in the automotive industry. A single vehicle fee is a 7-day pass. I don't think a $25 fee for 7 days in our park is unrealistic. I think that's very fair. Okay, so an individual fee for a hiker for a 7-day pass, I think $12 would possibly be a little low in my opinion. Okay? The motorcycle entrance fee, I think, is ridiculous. You have to realize that when a vehicle comes into the park, it's usually 1 or 2 vehicles max. I have girls at groups of 500 coming up in here. You cannot do that. You cannot have 5 of my friends come with me and we're handing over a C-note. That's just going a little too far. You need to do a per person fee. $5 per person would probably be appropriate, and then you still would be doubling your fee on the single riders, which most motorcycles are a single rider. Okay?
So just to make sure, I want to make sure we get this for the public record. She was recommending that.
I can talk on the microphone if you want.
Yeah, but I can.
I'm not shy.
I know you're not shy, but I'll just if this.
I'll speak up for myself. We do a lot of motorcycle activities in large groups. it's not realistic for these people to come in here and be handing out hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get into the park. When you have a car, or your friends or your families come up here, 1 or 2 cars, okay. I've got hundreds of girls coming up here sometimes. That's not realistic. That fee is too big of a jump. It should be $5 per person. It's not fair that a car could get in cheaper than a bike. Period. Okay, so that's my opinion on that. The camping, I think that's appropriate. I think the camping with potable water, I think, you know, okay, but I don't know about that one. The equestrian camping is fine. I think the group camping should be higher. Talking about a lot of people using that land, a lot of people walking over it, a lot of people doing damage. I think that should be higher. The backcountry camping, I think that'd be really hard for you to regulate, quite frankly, and it's probably going to cost you more trouble than it's worth.
You know what, I should have discussed the backcountry camping a little bit more to explain what's going on there. So when we talk about the backcountry fees, we're looking at one site in particular. We're looking at Pine City. Our natural resources staff and our ranger staff have seen on peak weekends, Pine City gets hammered. Folks are destroying vegetation by, there's historic campsites that are in those areas. We don't have specific campsites at I almost said Grand Canyon, at Joshua Tree. We don't have specific campsites at Joshua Tree in the backcountry. But there are kind of historic places that people have used that have been denuded, or it's in a sandy wash, or places like that. But in peak weekends over Thanksgiving, over spring break, which stretches now for about 2 months, Pine City is the one place in the park that gets overused to the point that we're seeing resource destruction. So we're looking at identifying 6 specific campsites in that area, and you'd actually be paying a backcountry fee to reserve those sites in advance. And we would limit that area would be a limited part of the park. All other backcountry camping inside the park would still be free, and so would still be in the open.
I'm just thinking from a management point of view, it's going to be a thorn in your side.
I know it's a thorn in my side, but I've got to figure some way to protect that. Jeff?
It's going to be managed through recreation.gov.
I'm sorry?
It'll be managed through recreation.gov. We're going to put it on the recreation.gov
Oh, okay, I'm very
site.
familiar with that.
Right.
So you're talking about the entire grounds or the backcountry?
Just that backcountry site that we're looking at for Pine City. And it's only for developed, I don't want to use the word develop. Basically, we're going to put a camp post out there and say, if you have reserved for Pine City number 2, you'll get a map to it,
Gotcha.
and there'll be a post there saying 2 on it. And that'll be your area to camp. So we're not necessarily, we agree with you, we didn't want to necessarily manage it. We already have recreation.gov that helps us manage our camping in the park. So we're going to use them to do that.
How many people can camp in that area? Like how many people will you be registering through registration.gov?
So I don't think we've come up with actually campsite numbers and limits.
It's not going to be a backcountry anymore to start putting numbers up.
No, there'll be a certain amount. Right now our backcountry camping for
Wilderness is 12.
12 and non-wilderness is 20. So we may adjust that for back there again, depending on the resources and needs. This window opened up for us with all the fees.
Right.
And so we actually had approval last year to discuss this, but we held off on it because we knew this was coming.
Right.
And there's no sense in having 2 public meetings a year later. So we don't know when this window will open again, so that's why we're bringing that forward.
Which, I'm basically done, but I think that our fees are very reasonable for a 7-day time frame. I think we should go up on a few, and I definitely think the motorcycle's unrealistic.
Just to let you know, I've heard a lot of feedback on the motorcycle issue. So you're
And
not
I'm pretty much an authority on this, so I'm telling you.
Okay.
It's not gonna go
I-
real well at all.
Leslie, thank you for sharing.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it, sir.
Hi, thanks, Dave. My name's Gary Chandler. I own Joshua Tree Outfitters.
Okay.
Been in business about 11 years in downtown Joshua Tree. Some of these fees are excessive, and I think will decrease park visitation and hurt local businesses. The $25 entry fee is higher than Yosemite's current entry fee, and it's hard to compare Joshua Tree to Yosemite with all its infrastructure and services that it has, and Joshua Tree that doesn't have a water spigot in it, and I like it that way. I want to keep it that way. I don't want to have a grocery store that sells liquor and cigarettes in the park. $25 for entry and $15 for camping is $40 for one person to go camping for one night, $55 for 2 nights. You can get a room at the High Desert Motel for $50 a night. King size bed, TV, private bathroom. different experience, but those fees are getting close to what it takes to stay in a hotel. People are going to look at that and say, do I want to sleep on the ground and listen to the coyotes, or do I want to sleep in a warm bed? They may be making those decisions. A lot of people visit the park just for the day. $25, I think, is too much to ask for somebody to drive through the park from Joshua Tree to I-10. I think you'd be wise to look at a day pass for less than $10.
So that's, if I can just address that one issue. So Congress has created this fee system for us. We can't do day passes. We're not given that opportunity to do something like that. I wish we could. It would make a lot more sense. They've given us this 7-day pass, so we're stuck with that.
At $25, I think a lot of people will say, that's lunch, that's most of a tank of gas these days, and they may just skip going through the park and not get that experience, and that's going to hurt the National Park Service as a whole. Those people are going to be less likely to support legislation that supports the parks, and might be more likely to support privatization of parks. I know you guys hate that stuff, and I do too. I'd hate to see, Archer Daniels Minden collected fees. Can't do a day pass, that's too bad. Equestrian camping ought to be more than a $5 premium on top of regular camping. Horses have a heavy impact in this park. I agree with this lady that $20 for a single motorcycle will keep a lot of motorcyclists from going through the park and maybe even coming to Joshua Tree.
Yes.
$20 is fuel for a day for a motorcycle.
It will stop it.
Yeah, it's not going to stop everybody, but it will decrease. I think it will decrease vegetation or visitation. And you make no mention of increasing commercial fees for tour buses or vans or movie shoots, commercials.
So we don't have the authority to do the commercial buses. It's a separate congressional action that would have to take place to affect that. So we can't do that. As far as commercial filming and things like that, and the fees that we have for that, is that the same authority? So we.
It's set by Washington.
So,
it's uniform across the country.
yeah, I'm sorry that.
Oh.
With the amount of filming and stuff that actually happens in the park, I hear where you're coming from.
Do they get in for free?
No. They,
What do they pay, $20?
No. I mean, they pay a considerable amount of money. They usually have to have a monitor with them, so they're paying for a ranger on overtime or 2 rangers on overtime to watch them the entire time they're there to make sure that there's no resource damage that occurs, in addition to a fee. And if there is, well, we don't allow anything that's really going to affect visitors, so they can't. They can stop traffic for a few minutes, but anything that would really impinge. We're going to mitigate that with some fees.
You can't do any backdoor fees where you're charging them per person on them too, on top of?
Well, they're paying their entrance fee into the park.
That's it.
My last point would be group camping. You should think about charging for the total occupancy of the site. If the site holds 30 people, $5 a head, the site is $150 flat, rather than the $30 or $50 that you're proposing. That seems.
So
you're going up.
That seems like a.
So do we have the ability to do that with the fee system for group sites? Could we actually do per person?
Well, not a per person.
But you're saying based on the size of the site?
Correct.
They're taking the site.
Like you charge for the tour buses.
Right.
It's
So for
total
our we do have a graduated scale for our.
We do based on the size of the site.
Okay.
One of the things, and I'm just throwing this out there for education purposes. If we start charging way more on these, they're going to start going into here. And they're doing it now.
Yeah.
When all these group sites get filled up, the groups that can't get a reservation are coming in and taking up 5 of what we call family campsites, so that the whole group can be there. So just consider that if this goes up any more than than is somewhat reasonable for them.
Right.
They're going to be going into these other places in droves. And your individual families, the ones that come out, some of these groups will send
That's a
somebody
valid
out
point.
2 days early.
Right.
We have laws against them reserving. They actually have to physically. We only have so many ranger staff, but that one person who gets off at 5 o'clock on a Friday night and tries to get out here, and then all of a sudden some group's got, 5 sites taken up because they're coming up later or the next day. So just, be careful, think about that too.
Sure.
I
You're
don't
making
disagree-
that'll
making
put
a very
pressure.
valid
yeah, I don't disagree with you, but just, if you hadn't thought about that, that's in the equation also.
Right, great, thank you.
Sir?
Yes. Thanks, Mike. I got a question now. If the prices on here are okay, the only one the motorcycle one is a little high, but it's still okay. Would it be better to set the price right now, what is proposed, instead of, okay, this year we're going to be this price, next year we're going to be this price. It seems like it'll be nickel and diming you again, instead of one big price for, how many years would you figure this price would stay? If you did it at one lump and say, how long would this increase last? Instead of doing $2 this year, $2 next year, and so on.
Get it now. Get it now.
Jeff?
And again, I'm not here to persuade anybody, but it's something to think about, at least from my perspective as the overall, I work for David, but I manage the fee program and it works for me. You have a very valid point, and where I'm going with that is consider the fact that if we do it every couple of years, we've got to pay to change new entrance signs, pay to print new envelopes, brochures, things like that. So just, again, something on the infrastructure to think about.
Right, that's what I was
He's
saying, is it better to do
I
it?
know that, but I didn't know if
That
everybody
way.
understood those things.
Yeah, we don't want to do
have
it that way. I'm a
costs if we go internally up every year.
I'd rather keep it.
And then why delay on getting the money we need anyways? That's my point. If you need it so bad, why delay the money? Raise it now.
Because I want to hear back from you guys, whether
That's
or
my
not this
point.
is a...
Yeah, it's not a question. I'm making that point.
So, just a side issue. I really believe in my heart that parks, public land belongs to the public, and we want to make sure as many people as possible that the barriers are not there preventing people from enjoying their public land. Parks have this high level of protection, way more than we allow the BLM or the Forest Service, and because of that, that is a barrier. So if you want to go on your dirt bike, there's a few places you can do it inside of a park. There's a lot of limits inside of a park, whereas in BLM areas you have a lot more flexibility. But we want to tear down these walls as much as possible. And when $25, it's not going to hurt me. I buy an annual pass every year for $80 that gets me free entry into all parks in the United States for a year. So it doesn't kill me. There are some families though where that is, like you were saying, it will prevent them from actually going inside the park. Some of the women on your rides, it's going to this is crazy. I'm not going to.
5 bikes, $100.
That's a lot of money. For some people, $100 is not a lot. In the high desert, it's a lot of money. And it will affect people. The one neat thing I do like about Joshua Tree that is part of our culture is that we have Black Rock, Indian Cove, and 49 Palms, where we do not charge entrance into those portions of the park. So I always have some solace in knowing that someone in 29 Palms, if a kid really wants his mom and dad to go on a hike, he can take them up to 49 Palms, and there's no charge. They can go into Indian Cove and they can climb up to the top of Rattlesnake Canyon, or they can go on boulders all day and there's no charge. And then they can camp out on the BLM area out in the Old Dale District, and they're fine. There's no charge. So we do have those opportunities. So I feel sometimes like there is opportunity where the walls are not quite as high as they could be. So I'm babbling now. So Cole.
This has just been very informative to me, and I appreciate those statements that you make, because the gentleman that talks about the nickel and diming, it's the nickel and dime people that I worry about too, because I know a lot of folks in this area, it's one of the activities that they can get to without going a long distance and enjoy it. But, like you said, you've been very, very informative in terms of the needs, and I understand what all of the folks are saying.
Can we do a local fee?
We don't have the authority to do a local fee, which is a big, it's a drag. I hear that every single day from people. But we do have the places where we don't charge admission to the park. And for locals in the summertime, frankly, we're not full staffed in the summertime. There are times you can come into the park, and all the locals know it when, there's no charge to come into the park. We don't like to say that, but they're not manned 24/7.
Can meetings like this, through acclamation, and you can send letters or these forms back to them and say, we're encouraging a day or two pass, versus just a 7-day pass?
Well, that kind of stuff I would take to Mr. Cook. I would take to Mr. Ruiz down in the low desert. I'd take to Ms. Feinstein. That's the kind of stuff where they take action. Or to the director of the Park Service and say, hey, why don't you have local passes? I keep on hearing trains. I did not realize there's a train line here. Sir.
My name is Jim Reed. I'm a businessman in Josh Tree. I live in Indian Cove as well. And I really like that we don't have fees in certain sections. I think as long as we can keep that, I think that these fees aren't that big of a deal. I am concerned about the two-wheel vehicles and the unfair increase versus four-wheel vehicles, being horses and cars versus hikers, bicyclists in particular, and motorcycles.
So thank you. Comment, I've heard that from a number of letters that have come in already. So
As long as it's out there.
your point is well taken.
Thank you.
Miss.
Hi, my name is Penny, and I was just wondering, are you restricted to choosing a level, or can you pick and choose from the district requirements?
So Penny wanted to know if we were restricted to a level. We can appeal our level if we think that we should be a Y park, a Yellowstone park, or if we think we should be considered on the 2 tier. So we could appeal that. I probably, realistically, we are a large size park that's, not quite Yellowstone, but way larger and more visited than most of the other ones. So I think the tier they picked for us is probably appropriate, but I do know that we have a lot of flexibility in how we do that. So we're not stuck to those numbers.
But I mean, in a tier, as long as you select the fees in a tier, you're not going to be, you're not able to change just one of the fees. You have to stay
No,
with that.
we can change, so these are guidelines. The Park Service, they would love it if it could go out into a tour guide that says, if you visit a big park, this is the standardized fee, no matter if you're at Everglades or at Glacier National Park or at Hawaii Volcanoes or, one of the other parks. This is what you're going to pay no matter what. So I think the goal is by 2017, 2018, we will have consistency in our fees for the big parks, the medium parks, the small parks. But until then, we have a lot of flexibility in what we do based on what we hear from the public comment.
So even if you just want to change one of the fees on
If we want to say, for example, motorcycles, we're gonna do $7.50. Wouldn't you love to have 50 cents in the fee department? I can just see right now, coins all over the place. No, $7.49.
12 is going to be bad enough.
We do have flexibility to do that.
All right, I just wasn't clear if you
No, this is what we got recommended from Washington that we should be doing for a park our size. This is your opportunity to say, and what I've heard clearly tonight is with motorcycles, this is way out of line with what most people would think. I've heard from other folks that maybe fees should be higher in some circumstances. Miss.
My name's Linda Campbell, and I've lived out here since 1981 in Joshua Tree. I'm here representing my hiking club. We have 226 members, and we hike a lot in Joshua Tree. Most of us buy the annual pass. I agree. Why can't the locals get a little bit of a break?
I'm with you. So I will pass that on.
Yeah, please do.
Before I came here, I worked in DC. I worked directly for the director of the Park Service. So I do have a little bit of a direct line to him, and I will tell him that this is some of the feedback that I'm hearing from the locals, that wouldn't it be great to have some sort of a local pass?
Because hiking is a very inexpensive
Okay.
activity. You
So-
second that?
Yeah, third it. I'm with you.
So the annual pass was the kind of compromise that Congress came up with. They said parks can have an annual pass. It can be the equivalent to about 2.5 times what a normal pass is to go inside the park. So with this schedule that we have right here, it's twice the single visit pass would cover your annual pass for the park.
Right now, we're cramming as many hiking bodies into one car as we can. We're going to be doubling.
Well, as an environmentalist, I appreciate you
Yes.
cramming as many people in the car as possible.
We just make butts in those seats as we can.
Gosh.
But you're almost doubling our annual pass.
Yeah.
So, just a couple more points on that. She's cramming 6 people in a car, you see what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
I'm gonna roll by with
exactly.
2 people on my bike and more.
Right.
Or the same.
There you
Don't
go.
make me real cranky. Second of all, yeah, real cranky. Second of all, yeah, something needs to be done about the fees for the locals. I mean, something needs to say something, because you came from the Grand Canyon, I heard you say?
Couple parks back, yeah.
Okay, well, I've been to the Grand Canyon, in an RV, so I know your setup. People don't hang out there and camp a lot as much as they do here. Locals are not as involved in your area as they are here. We all moved here for this park. I'm quite sure nobody will disagree with me. This is our life. It's a lot of our lives in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
So the locals here are a little bit more integrated than Grand Canyon locals. And you should.
Excellent
that
point. You know,
temperature's a lot
our
different, sweetie, here.
I hear it all the time. I was going to, I hear it at church, I hear it when I go to Rotary, I hear it at the supermarket. I mean, people nail me in the supermarket, in the produce section.
Yeah.
If I refuse to wear a uniform anymore because
Yeah.
people tell me all their issues because they love the park so
Yeah,
much.
that's why we're here.
I saw a dog up in Rattlesnake Canyon the other day. You need to do something. Why don't you have any rangers up there?
Yeah, exactly, but we moved here for that, and our emotions are really high with that, so as locals, I
Thank
think
you,
that
Leslie.
something needs to be addressed on that,
Thank you.
seriously.
Does the annual pass, the local annual pass, the 80% stays within the park?
Is it 80% or 100% for the local? And then if they buy the American the Beautiful pass, is it 80%? And the senior pass? So I guess
Yeah, it's across the board.
everything we sell, all the passes we sell, we get 80% of it back to the park.
So that doesn't hurt.
What's nice is when it comes to the America the Beautiful pass, just for you guys to know, for your own edification, we're one of the first stops. If you're coming into Los Angeles and you're coming from Germany or someplace like that, so they come into the park and they buy the national pass for all the parks. And we benefit from that. I feel bad for the parks that are two or three parks away from us because they can't benefit in the way we do. So.
Don't feel bad.
Yeah. Okay. It's Meg, what do you think?
No, well, I'm, just for full disclosure, I work with the Joshua Tree National Park Association, and we're the nonprofit that supports the park. And I've been the executive director for about 2 years, but I've lived here in Basin for over 30. So I still have to correct myself in calling us the monument.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
But I know, I wasn't involved when we first started charging fees, but it was nice to see the local improvements. And so when I, have the mixed emotions about wanting to, improve the park and being a possible barrier, but I also look at, $50 annual pass for unlimited admission. It's where can you take a family and have such a quality time? It's a great bargain. So, pardon me, I never liked entry fees or increases, but since working with the association, I've really gained an appreciation for how much it's needed. And we do have so many areas like Pine City that are just trammeled. And I looked in the literature here, and we talked about the Floria funds that enabled students to come, but we didn't have the park didn't have the staff to lead those kids on tours. So we were able to step in and get grant writing for that. But I'm in favor, we need the help. So I think it's...
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just saw you back there.
Well, you ask and my
so every time you do go to the bookstore and stuff like that, the profits, she takes the profits and then she invests them into the park. So you've been a great partner that have funded so many things, so thank you.
Well, and our programs were started because of shortfalls with the parks. We run the Desert Institute, and we were asked to assume that in the 90s because of the shrinking staff. The Black Rock Lecture Series we started because there weren't rangers to do the campfire talk. So I'm glad we are able to partner and fill in those gaps. But so I've really gained an appreciation for the maintenance challenges and staffing challenges. And but with that hat off, I think $50 for an annual pass for us locals or visitors is hard to beat.
Thanks, Mike. Sir.
Do you have a rainy day fund put off to the side, like just recently the big rains that tore apart all the way to Cottonwood? And who does the repairs? Do you have to contract that out to repave it?
Those are good questions. We have a small rainy day fund in the park. It's the donation account that we can use. We have certain accounts that we keep with the association that they've solicited donations with that we can use, but that cannot cover a road that gets destroyed, or if we have a major emergency like a fire inside the park, or if it's a 12-hour rescue that involves a helicopter. All that, that's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So when that happens, we go to the regional office and they find the money for us. If they don't have the money, they'll go to the Washington office, and it will be diverted from some other program in the National Park Service. So we may have put together, let's say we put together $2 million for a special law enforcement study or something going on, or an operation. That money will be ripped from that to actually cover the emergency road repair that's going on.
Could they put that off to the side? Because most of the time, probably 80%, there's one time a year, like just recently, the rain just dumped on it.
Yeah.
Joshua Tree, Cottonwood, the road gets closed.
So we've got, we've got graders. We've got, we have 5 positions for road crew at the park, and I think 2 or 3 of them they've been open for the last 6 to 12 months. So we've got 2 guys that are doing our road crews, so we didn't have enough bodies to really maintain the roads at the level that we do. I just authorized, the hiring of those people, and some of those positions are paid entirely from fees because of the services that they're doing. They're tied nicely. So your question is, do we contract out? Sometimes we do have to contract out because we can't do it. So the new road that just went in the middle of the Pinto Basin, that was contracted out through Federal Highways. Federal Highways paid for that, so that your gas taxes paid for that money to actually get those roads fixed. The washout that we had, that was paid through Park Service money, but not from our park because we didn't have enough money to pay for it.
One more thing and then I'll hush up. When you get a project going, I might suggest that you maybe do a little blast out in the newspaper for volunteers, because this town's heavy on that stuff.
So just so you know, she was talking about volunteers. Last year we had 42,000 hours in volunteer time. That's 20 full-time employees at the park.
So you should do blast outs, what I'm saying. Do you get a little blast out? And my wife and I got married in Keys View also. So.
Excellent place to get married. Very, very good. Congratulations.
All right, I'm hushed now.
Okay, you can talk some more. You make me want to ride a motorcycle.
I was just wondering, like with the big budget project we were talking about at Black Rock, are you allowed to allocate any savings?
That's tough. What we can do, we can do it kind of piecemeal. So we can use some of our fee monies. So the first thing we got to do is, we've got the initial planning done on it. So you might be aware in Yucca Valley, they just repaved the road that goes into Black Rock, which was just I remember it being I won't say a bad word, but a really bad road from 15 years ago. It's amazing right now. And so part of the problem with that road is water drains from Black Rock into that road and eats away at it. So we're going to use some of our fee money in the next year or two to divert that water so that it does not destroy the new road. So we can piecemeal start doing it. Phases it. I'm going to have to apply to our Washington office for funds to cover that. We may be able to use some of our fee money to do it, but realistically, it would deplete our fee money for 5 or 6 years, to do that. And I need it for operations right now. Miss?
I was just curious how many volunteers you had versus
hours.
Yeah, I just want you to do it by the hours. So my next, because that question was answered, how many employees do you have?
So right now we have just shy of 100 employees in the park. We have about 98 employees.
And that's from office down to the guys?
That's from
the toilets.
Okay. Everybody. That's from me down.
Almost 100.
Almost 100, and then we, the equivalent of 20 other full-time employees with volunteers. Okay. We've got the institute, the Sonoran Desert Institute. No, Sonoran Desert Institute. Desert Institute. Thank you very much. It's been a very long day. I just want you to know it's been a long week. The Desert Institute staff as well. So we have about, I think, 5 kids from that are working for us right now that help out as well. Okay. And then we have our friends at the association. They man the visitor centers half the time. Yep. So you got another probably 10 employees there that are helping us. So there's about 130
paid employees.
100 paid employees, federally paid employees. Desert Institute, about another 5.
Okay. I think you mean Great Basin Institute?
Great Basin, I'm sorry, thank you.
We have Great Basin Institute students that are also, that is where I think you're going with that.
And the SEAs.
I'm really dangerous because I know a little bit about a lot of things and not a lot about anything. So we use the Student Conservation Association, which is a volunteer program where we pay them a stipend through some of these different associations to bring them into the park. So your question, how many people get paid? About 100 people really get paid for working inside the park. The rest are student interns. They're getting paid stipends and volunteers and things like that.
Okay, well, Leslie's right. You should put a shout out when the community...
Well, you know, we just did Public Lands Day, and it was a blast. We did do a shout out. A number of Marines came from the base, and they made these mud balls. And I know these mud balls well because I carried them on my back, like 80 pounds worth. And we filled them full of seeds, dried them out, and then took them in to Juniper Flats, you know, about 3 miles into a wilderness area, and shot them out all over the place. Well, shot them out, we threw them out, because there's no more soil in those areas because the fire destroyed all the topsoil and it washed away. It was all defoliated granite. Those little seed balls, then if we ever do get rain again in the high desert, take off. You have these little island ecosystems that pop up that repopulate the area. So that was a great, you know, Public Lands Day with lots of good volunteers from the community that came out.
You got 250 hikers right there. We probably could run
Yes.
about another 40.
I got
And we'll go drop some trees for you.
So I've got a full-time volunteer coordinator, George Land, and you know he's just fantastic at recruiting people, and he's really good at it. If you're going to have a good volunteer program in your park, you got to have a dedicated person to do it. It can't be a collateral duty, and so you know he's gotten an additional 20 employees out of that one person. So I appreciate him. Sir.
I honestly think if you raise the entrance fee, people are going to sit out front and they're going to wait till the ranger closes down. Because when it went from 5 to 10, me and everybody I knew, that's what we did. I cooked mini dinners out in front of that ranger station until that ranger walked away and drove in. I don't do that anymore, but the minute the fees go up, the younger population, they're not going to pay. Plus, I see nothing about adding campgrounds, walk-in sites for campgrounds. The big problem in Joshua Tree, there's no campgrounds.
There you go.
You can't stay if you want to stay unless you're there on a Thursday because half the people aren't paying to stay in there and you're not kicking them out. And the other half, they can't get in. So you want to raise fees for visitor centers, you want to raise fees for educational programs, but that doesn't give the daily user, the person who wants to go and camp out, any benefit at all, except the entrance. That's a great idea, we need the 2 entrances. But really, raising the fees for a campground where there's no amenities, I like it with no amenities. But to raise it, the campgrounds are trash. And the people who are cleaning them up are the people staying in them. I've never seen a ranger in the last 10 to 12 years walk through a campsite and pick it up. Not once. And I spend a lot of time in that park, like multiple days a week in that park. So, and I don't even get a campsite in there anymore because it's impossible. Thank God I live here. You know, but I prefer, you guys have no walk-in site. You have no, the campsites are very few.
So the way we design parks often is we use something called a general management plan, and it's a planning document where we go to the public and ask them, you know, what they want with their park. And our GMP is 20 years old, but when it was created last time, you know, it was based on this idea of the number of campgrounds that we had. That was the public input that we got at the time. They wanted some remote spots like Hidden Valley. Hard to believe that Hidden Valley was kind of this remote wilderness area, but they wanted a place where there was no amenities, no water, no electricity or sewage dump-offs or places like that. But they wanted a few places like Cottonwood where they actually could get water and facilities if they needed them. That was based 20 years ago when our visitation was considerably less than it is today. Like you say, our campgrounds fill up most weekends for 6 months a year, 7 months a year sometimes. So one of my priorities right now is to look at carrying capacity at the park and look at, we probably are not going to get another general management plan because they cost too much money to do, but I can look at our carrying capacity and can look at places, should we be considering other ways of expanding the amount of people that can camp inside the park at night. I was at a public meeting a month ago, and it was just an idea that someone threw out to me. It was during Climb Smart. This woman came to me afterwards, she talked to me, she said, well, why don't you use your backcountry camping areas? You've got these big parking lots there. Why don't people that have self-contained units, if they have like a minivan or something, just let them park there overnight and don't charge. You know, well, you can charge them if you want to, but you could expand your capacity without actually having to really do anything at all. That was a pretty darn good idea. You know, I haven't run it by my management team yet. I haven't gone through all the hoops to actually do that, but I thought those are the kind of ideas I need right now. Can we safely expand our capacity without damaging the resource too much? In Pine City, yeah, we can't really expand our capacity. We know that probably about 6 or 7 campgrounds are all we can kind of handle in that area because it just gets hammered otherwise. But I hear what you're saying. It's going to take a little bit of time, but hopefully, you know, a year from today, I'll be able to say, you know what, we think we can redesign our campgrounds to expand them to be a little bit larger, or we can't. I might say that too. Maybe we're going to have to maximize the BLM areas around the park. Maybe, develop some areas in Old Dale, or, off the southern boundary of the park, or Morongo Preserve. I'm just pulling things out of the air right now. But those might be some of the things we're thinking about as well. But I hear you loud and clearly. Yes, sir.
Is there a possibility that you can actually make a new campground in the park?
Well, that's a possibility too. Can we make a new campground? Is there an area that is not sensitive, that's disturbed maybe? I don't mean disturbed mentally, but I mean where it's been disturbed, where we're not going to harm anything that's out there. It is a possibility. I've been looking at the map of the park recently because that's been in the back of my mind, realizing that our campgrounds are filling up all the time. But I'm not smart enough to give you an answer right now. That's something I have to vet with our staff and with the public to see if that's something that they want out of the park. But it is a possibility. It's not off the table. Miss.
Yeah, to make one more point.
You said you weren't going to make any more points.
It's too big. You've got to make more sites. We are so isolated. There's no cell phone reception. People get in there. They come out there. They've packed up their whole lives to get out there, and they got nowhere to go. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. That needs to be at the top of the list. No. We have nowhere to go.
So Leslie,
they're trashing places because we got nowhere to go.
So Leslie, you're saying more capacity for camping.
That is huge. I don't even know why I didn't think of that. That is so huge. You could make so much more money with the capacity. There's so many spots. What's that one site out there where there's 8 and 8? What's that one where there's 8 and 8 together? What's the name of that one? Bell. You could expand that to heaven and back, and you can.
I love Bell. I love camping at Bell.
Yeah. I mean, come on. What's the one that right out there before you get to the 10 where you turn right?
White tanks.
All that can be expanded.
That's not necessarily a good thing for the park, though.
But it's part of a public discussion, and that's out there. And so I'm hearing that there's a lot of people that want more camping. I've also got to hear from folks that say, you know what, this is about as much as we can handle right now. We got these lines that are stretching for 20, 30, 40 minutes outside the park now on the weekends. If we have more people camping inside the park, those lines get bigger.
We got to turn around, ready to shoot somebody.
How many paid camping sites do you have in the park?
There are 500 and change camping sites in the park.
Okay, I'm sorry.
How many family sites do we have in the park?
494.
494 plus an additional 60 group sites, or
22 group sites.
Okay.
Because I know there's the dry lake across from where dry lake right over here where you guys send your overflow.
Yeah.
I live just across the street there on Mount Shasta Street. We sometimes find campers up on our street camping because they didn't know where to go.
Right.
Yes.
So that means, reaching, if the public says, this is a real need, and, we serve you. You own these parks. You own these public lands. I am a civil servant. My job is to serve you. So if that's what we're hearing from the public, by and large, we need to find opportunities for you all. But at the same time, we've got this thing called the Organic Act, which says we have to preserve these places for future generations. We've got to protect them so that when your clients do come out to the park, they have that wilderness experience still. So there's a lot of different voices that are part of this discussion.
Well, raise your fees real high and nobody will come out.
Well, that's some people have made that argument.
I know.
I've heard that.
Our hiking group, we go up on the tram a lot. Well, now they're thinking of charging every car that goes up on the tram. Every car that parks is going to be paying an extra fee on top of your fee to go up and start hiking up in Mount San Jacinto.
Yeah.
Do you establish the target date for any implementation changes?
Oh, so I was reading something like November 7th is when we're supposed to have some, if we wanted to implement it by January 1st, it would have to be in by November 7th, but that's not going to happen. That's tomorrow. So we'll probably get our comments in to, first week or two of December. And then, I would imagine a decision probably in January, February. And if we implemented this probably for the spring, probably April, if we did decide to go ahead and raise fees.
Do they have to be written comments, or could you send the video in?
Well, my Jamie over here, she's going to be going through that video, writing down everything that you said tonight, and then we're going to follow you based on what you said. No, we're gonna get those comments and be able to document them. Yes.
Who are the deciders?
Well, you're part of the deciders. You're the first level of deciding. I take all this that Jamie puts together and see, is there a consensus? Do I see trends here? So I can tell you flat out right now, I've heard every single time I've sat down about the motorcycle issue. So that's going to be an issue. That's probably not going to fit into the numbers that are right there. So I will make my recommendations based on what you all say. I will share them with my management staff. They will put in their 2 cents. We'll have some sort of a consensus on that, and then it will go up to the regional director up in San Francisco, and probably whatever she says is going to be the final decision.
Okay, so it's all internal with the Interior Department and not micromanaged by Congress?
Well, you know, if we blow it, it will be micromanaged by Congress. If we raise them too high or too low, trust me, Congress will probably have a hearing on this.
Well, okay, I've watched your overview on how you're budgeted for the last 2 or 3 decades and what's happening here, and I'd say the fair and equal thing to do would be just triple the fees for every registered Republican trying to get into the national park.
Amen, brother. See, now you're talking.
So this is not a political meeting. You know, we serve everyone in the United States regardless of their political affiliation. So. Well, you guys spent, you know, an hour and 15 minutes on a pretty good night, which you should have been out there hiking under the full moonlight tonight, and be there with your spouses or with your friends or on your bike. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for spending time with me. If you get another idea, another bug, I'm sure Leslie is more than happy to share, you know, ideas with me. Please.
I'm the crazy one on the dirt bike.
Either drop me a note at the park or stop by. I'm there Monday through Friday. Lately it's been like from 7 to 7, so I should be there if the lights are on. Come into the door if the door's unlocked. But I really want to thank you guys for coming out tonight.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
No problem at all. Congratulations on your wedding.
Oh, thank you. She's at home with the baby. We have a
Okay.
baby now.
Congratulations.